AJ.
Hey, how you doing?
Good. How are you doing?
Doing well.
Hello, everybody.
Hey,
Hey,
Bob.
Bob.
Good evening, everyone.
Hi, Jim.
Hello.
Jim, I made you the co-host so you can share things.
Oh, I like to share.
I appreciate that. And I just sent out the new budget, and it's not. There's only about half dozen changes, but it's worth looking at again.
Okay. Four. I think we're just waiting on George. That sound right?
Here he is.
There's George. Hey. Can we make a motion to call a meeting order?
Second.
Okay. We are meeting. Let's see, we've got, looks like Gail and Steve are on, and they'll be presenting broadband, MLP budget. Since both you guys are on, do we want to go ahead and kick it off with you guys? Going through your, unless you're expecting others, Gail or Steve.
Nope, just us. We're ready when you are.
Yeah, so if you're both on, why wait until 7:10? Why don't we just go ahead with you guys? And we'll start with you first, and then we'll go through the rest of our agenda.
Great. Well, thank you for that. Could I have screen share permissions and I'll bring
Yes,
up our budget?
Sorry about that. 1 second. Will Steve need one too, or just you, Gail?
Nope, just me.
Okay.
All right, so you should be seeing our fiscal year 2022 budget on your screens right now. And Steve is going to talk us through this. Feel free to ask any questions.
Okay.
And Steve, don't forget to unmute yourself.
Okay, there. As I'm looking at this, Gail, this isn't the one that has the tab that shows last year's budget, does it?
It does not, but I can certainly bring that up if you like.
I would think that might be useful to
Okay.
just look at the comparison.
Sure.
I do have it if want me to
Yeah, Steve and Gail, just for your information, all 7 members of Finance Committee are here,
good.
and as well as Becky.
You know, I've got this
Yeah, Steve, if you have it, why don't you bring it up? I have our old budget, but I don't have that nice side-by-side one that we've used in the past.
okay. And
I'll stop sharing and let you go.
1 second. You're set. Looks like Melody evaporated.
Yeah. Scary. Oh, she's back. We were worried about you. Looked like something bad happened there.
It's like she got beamed.
Yeah, it was pulsating light where you had been sitting.
okay, how do I screen share here?
Yep. So at the bottom of your screen, there's going to be a little green button. It should be underneath where all the people squares are that says share screen.
Oh, that's simple enough. Select a window. How about? Oh. Okay, there we go. And does everybody have that?
Yes.
Yes.
Yep.
Okay, so I would say the most significant, I'm bouncing around here. Most significant change, keeps opening and closing. Is that happening to everybody?
No, it's
So you're-
staying, looks like it's staying constant on our side.
Okay. Most significant change is the maintenance budget that for the current year, last year's budget, we budgeted 108,000. We based that on Leverett's budget since, that was what we've based a lot of what we've done on, being a earlier operator with a similar size network. So far this year, our maintenance expenses are running way below that. So we just felt that we could reduce the budget for next year and see how that goes. And otherwise, it's pretty much the same. The truck retainer fee is the same. Insurance did go up a bit.
Jim? I'm sorry, Steve, I think Jim was trying to ask a question.
Yeah, yeah. Just to your point about how you came up, or at first, at least for me, it really helps to see last year or this current year, fiscal 21, to see how that bridges to fiscal year 22.
Yeah.
But my question has to do, Steve, with you said originally your thinking was, well, Leverett is a pretty similar situation, so maybe we should have similar maintenance costs to Leverett. And based on your 1 year's or this current experience, that doesn't look like the case. Is there any explanation for what might be different between us and Leverett that might explain why we can operate at such lower maintenance?
Well, we've been talking about that. Seems to be there's a number of things that the technology of the network is different in Shutesbury. It's Leverett uses direct Ethernet, which is a separate line to each house, where we use the just sort of a distributed shared line. So some of the cables are smaller when they have to work on them. All of our drops are connectorized so that they don't have to, if a drop breaks, which is the most likely damage, they can just plug a new one in. It doesn't require splicing. There's a feeling that we have a very well-built network and that maybe the quality of the network might be superior to what Leverett has. That's going on.
Yep. And we're also seeing this trend across other state GPON networks. We do think that the active Ethernet model versus the GPON,
Which is what we have in Shutesbury is the G.
right. So it stands for Gigabit Passive Optical Network. And here's how I think of it, because you can get all in technical in the weeds, but when something in Leverett breaks, they have a huge spaghetti mess of all these fibers that they have to fix, because every house is getting a dedicated fiber, where in Shutesbury, if something breaks, we have much less fiber to have to rebuild. And what Steve said with that connectorized, meaning that every time a drop, so one of the strands of fiber going from the road to the house down the driveway breaks, you have to splice it. And it's very time consuming. It's very expensive. Whereas we have these pre-connectorized, it's like Legos on both ends, and you just plug them in. There's no splicing. There's no special technical person you have to call in. It's just a guy or a gal with a line truck. String up the new fiber, plug it in, and you're good to go. So that's where we're seeing a big difference in our maintenance between Leverett. And I think also that the tree trimming that's been done over the last couple of years due to ice storms has helped us out. We haven't had nearly as many tree issues as I expected.
Thanks.
Yeah, other items, say we're in backhaul will be the same, manager stipend the same. Employment overhead, last year we budgeted $4,000 for that. That was based on, I think, an assumption that the manager stipend was including health insurance, which is not included. So it's much less, it's really pretty minimal this year. The Lifeline program's the same. Bond fee for polls is pretty much the same. Poll rental. The Calix Essential Support. Calix is the company that provides the electronics equipment in the hut, and this is a service, essentially a service contract with them that did go up. Realized we had nothing in the budget for office supplies, so we put a minimal amount in there for that. Legal, we had $5,000 in there. We haven't spent any of it, so we thought we can get by with 1,000.
Becky,
We might need to adjust that a little bit, but we'll talk about it.
Which one, Becky?
The legal, I think there was a couple of bills that I didn't pass on, so maybe for planning for next year, we'll want to keep it a little higher, but not much. I just realized when you said that I hadn't passed on a couple. Bills.
Well, if you've got them now, we've got $5,000 sitting there burning a hole in our pocket for legal.
All right, I will find them.
Let's see, others that are the same. Then debt service, we have increased. We're hoping to pay down. There's two major debts out for the network, and the one of them is on a 10-year note that comes due every April. So we have a regular schedule for that. We know exactly what that'll be. So that's the 101,200. And then there's the bond anticipation note that comes due each August. And we want to put a significant amount towards paying that down in August. And otherwise, pretty straightforward there.
yeah, Steve, question.
Yes.
Yeah, so is that 235,000 in the debt service in the budget for this coming year? Is that includes additional principal, or?
Yes. $130,000 additional principal payment for the ban that comes due this August. And the 101,000 is a principal and interest combined payment on the 10-year note. Yep.
Yeah, so I just want to say one more thing about this, is that the important takeaway point here is that we're continuing to pay off all of the capital construction debt using subscriber fees, so that you all, as the finance committee and responsible for deciding how to allocate tax money, we don't need anything. We're good. We're able to keep paying off all of that construction debt.
In addition, Steve, you might want to mention that the retained earnings, which will be voted on coming up at town meeting, all of that is going towards retiring the the ban debt as well. So that'll be an additional way to bring it down to a level that hopefully we'll be able to
Yes.
cover entirely next year.
Mm-hmm. In calendar year 2022.
Right.
So
So Steve,
Bob,
Bob Groves. Just, do you have any idea what the revenue is going to be this year when you get your final numbers? Is that something you're going to present today? Oh, there it is.
well, we're projecting, we're projecting 462,000 this year, 473,000 next year. We are running very steadily at about 39.5 a month of revenue. So, the first few months it was kind of up and down. It was building up, but then there was a lot of adjustments made, but it's gotten quite steady now. So,
But you won't know until the end of the fiscal year what the retained earnings might be because you won't have finalized your expenses for the year.
that's true. I mean, I'm projecting if we don't have any significant maintenance costs in the next 3 months, which is a big gamble, of course, that we would be. I'm projecting around $80,000 of retained earnings.
Great, thank you.
AJ,
Yeah, just quick clarification for the notes. I see here that, so we have two outstanding bans, right? And I see that one of them has a principal of, or I guess the original principal was $883,333, and that's borrowed at 1.25% through 2025. And then I'm assuming that means from 2025 through 2030, the interest rate increases to 2%. Is that correct?
Correct.
Okay. And then the second note is original principal of $406,870. Is that correct?
That's the current.
Oh, that's the
principal.
current balance. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
That's that one's the bond anticipation note that's on a 1 year
Okay. Got it.
repayment. The other one's a 10-year note that has been
Okay.
gone out to finalize at 10 years. So.
Okay. I got it now. Thank you.
yeah, just a general question on the debt service. How did I just, maybe it's more curiosity or whatever. How did you decide on the 235,000? Is that, it looks like there might have been a decision to pay off more principal earlier as a result of.
Yeah.
as a result of-
Does the notes column show there, column C?
Yes.
Yeah, because that shows what it's there's three components to that 235,000. The 101,200 is the payment on the 10-year note. So that's set. We have to pay that. Then the ban that comes due in August, because it's an annual rollover type of borrowing, there'll be $3,800 in interest that we have to pay on that. And then the principal that's paid, that, we can decide how much principal we want to pay. I mean, we do have to put something towards it. But yes,
Yeah, I guess that's my question, Steve, is how did you decide on the 130,000? What was the process?
We want to get that paid down as soon as we can. And as long as we've got the funds right now for it, we'd like to get one of those borrowings paid off. So we're not paying any more interest and paid off. Interest rates are low right now. We don't know that they're going to stay low. So let's get things paid off before rates go up, and we might have to be paying significantly higher rate. once that is paid off, which we project we can do in the next couple of years, we've only got the one debt payment to be making. And we would hope at that point that potentially we could lower the rates. But that's projecting forward, which we, we'll have to see how things go for another year.
Yeah, another way we kind of made the decision is like, what are all the fixed bills for this that we absolutely have to pay, and how much can we comfortably put towards that outstanding debt without putting anything like our maintenance budget at risk, and making sure that we have enough emergency reserve fund. So it's not an exact science there. But all of us on the MLP board are very comfortable with that number.
George,
So if I see this correctly, you got to that number. You put in the number you needed in debt service to make the expenses equal to the income. So basically you're funding it to the extent that you have revenue, right? And then Gail, I think you mentioned you might pay off even more of the debt than this portion that you're showing here because there's other funds available. Is that what I heard you say?
Definitely, because we have the fiscal year 2020 retained earnings that can be used towards that, and if all goes well, we'll pass that vote at town meeting, and that's 123,544. In addition, there's the last portion of the MBI state grant money in the amount of 25,500, which we've all agreed will also go towards this debt. So that 123,544 from 2020 retained earnings, 25,500 from the MBI grant, and then the 130,000 noted in this budget right here for the additional principal payment equals $279,044. Do all the math, and the balance left on that $406,870 ban will get down to $127,826. So we're doing a great job of getting that down to something very manageable. Any other questions?
Susie,
You need to unmute yourself.
Doing it, I'm doing it.
Okay.
So were there any more subscribers that came in after the original deadline? How's that been going, that process?
It's been going well. We picked up Steve. How many would you say? About a dozen new subscribers in 2020?
We're at
Yeah.
761 right now.
Yeah. So we voted early last year to still subsidize, we'll call them newcomers, so that we're trying not to price anybody out. So for the average installation, the homeowner pays somewhere between $200 and $300. And that was our goal because, as you all know, we all paid $200 as kind of that flat rate. So we're trying to get close to that. Yes, if you have a long driveway, if you have an underground installation, you're going to pay more. But we just came up with a subsidizing policy to try to make it more affordable for newcomers. And we were able to get a handful of houses connected through the CARES Act money too. So we're happy to say that as far as we know, every single school age kid in Shutesbury has broadband in their home. The school was great about letting us know who was in need, and Becky was great about connecting all of us so that we could get everybody taken care of in that way. So they paid nothing.
And so is there a budget line to do that in the future to help support hookups?
Yep. We'll keep doing that in the future, and it's just part of that maintenance budget.
Yeah, this year so far, we've spent 3,480 on installations. And
Okay, good, great.
Jim, can I just ask a quick question?
Yeah.
Just to follow up on, so that support for school age children in Shutesbury who might not have had subscriptions early, at the beginning of the year, is that, we're subsidizing the installation costs, but is there any process where we're essentially forgiving the subscription fees for any families? Does that happen at all in our town?
It's not. We
Okay.
talked about that early on around, I think it was April or May.
Mhm.
And then we talked about it again at the end of the year. And here's the crux of it,
Mhm.
is that we can't, we don't have any way to verify eligibility in a way that can't be challenged, in a way that is private enough. We had talked about, going through the school and having subsidies offered that way, but it's tricky because then other people are left out, right? Seniors get left out. Other low income folks get left out if you only are using something like school lunch eligibility. You'll notice that Lifeline line item in here.
Mhm.
So that does offer a slight reduction through the federal Lifeline program. But the catch is that it has to be set up by Westfield Gas and Electric. They won our census block during the Connect America Fund bidding, I don't know, 2 years ago. And they can't get that program going until I think it's 80, 90, I don't know, some huge percentage of all of the census block towns have a working system. And as you know, we were first, so we're just waiting. So anyway, we talked
hear
about it.
I guess I would
we
just
wanted to, yeah.
Yeah, I guess I would just make one point. I don't know if this is my place, but I think even moving forward after, sort of post-pandemic, I think access to the internet is just, it's kind of an educational equity issue at this point, given how much of students' school experiences are, like actually require internet access. And I think obviously there was a specific reason for it in the last year, but I kind of imagine that's going to continue to be a part of students' school experience, and that there's been this whole year of teachers developing resources, and so I'm sure this is a big part of your discussions. But I just to throw that out there, I think it's worth doing whatever we can to ensure that all children have access and the ability to participate in their school, which seems to like it's going to require internet access moving forward.
Yeah, we totally agree with you. We want to see that happen too.
Becky,
Jim, can I say something? I just wanted to
Sure,
add
Becky.
that the other part of what I was able to work out with the school and with we ended up not going through the MLP, but we were able to use CARES funds to credit families that were on the low and reduced lunch program for everything they spent on internet service from April through December.
Terrific. Okay.
And
Got it.
they were, so that was a wonderful,
Yeah.
we were able to do what the MLP has been trying to do with that program. So.
Oh, Becky, that's great. I know we had talked about it, but I didn't know it went through. That's
Yep.
wonderful. Yeah.
good.
We
Good.
found a way to do it. I worked directly with the school, and over 20 people benefited. So
Great.
it was good. Very
Yeah,
good.
I do remember when we were first organizing the broadband MLP, one thing we ran into, there's a legal issue that as a town entity, we cannot offer more than one price point, that we have to charge everybody the same amount for the same service. So the fact that you're able to do this through another mechanism is great.
Yeah. No, I know you guys have been trying to, so it was wonderful and now that we have more CARES money, we might be able to do more going into this year. We'll have to figure that out. It took me 3 or 4 months to get the approval. So that it was a big hang up, but it was, approval was given in December, so we managed to pull off the program.
Bob,
I just want to make a comment that I think I really do appreciate what we have in Shutesbury, and I think much of it due to this MLP and to the members of the broadband committee, that you're working towards reducing or eliminating the debt, and as soon as you can, you're managing it very efficiently, and you're keeping close tabs on your expenses. And so unlike many, many towns and communities in the country, we have very high quality service that is increasingly affordable and available. And it would be great if we had even higher participation, which would make it even more efficient and less costly for the individual household. And so I'm really pleased that the way things have gone. And we really do have affordable, and it will be more affordable in the future and still remain high quality. And sure, it would be great if other agencies could provide some help for people who can't, even with all that, afford it. But we're really way ahead of so many cities and towns presently. And so I'm very pleased about that. And I wish other towns would the government would help other towns get organized like we are, so that children and others could be served.
Yeah, it's happening, but it's slow. I'm getting contacted once or twice a month by organizations and municipalities around the country asking for information about it. I ended up just making a packet of information so that I was spending a lot of time on phone calls. I just made a packet, so now people call, I just send it to them. It has, our budget and a bunch of frequently asked questions. But it's great. It's happening all over the country. It's going to take several years, but there's tons and tons of interest in municipal networks like ours, and especially ones that are running successfully. I'm so proud of ours.
I don't want to be sarcastic, but it's a damn good thing that we don't have to rely on the telecommunication companies to provide portable services. And it's
Yes.
kind of a scandal that the federal government has been so lax in providing assistance to communities and frankly, good jobs for people to install this infrastructure.
okay. Any other questions for Steve or Gail? That was pretty easy.
Could the budget document be shared just so I can attach it to the notes for tonight's meeting? That Becky, you can send that?
No, Gail needs to send it. I also need it
Okay.
for the warrant. You don't anticipate any changes at this point, right?
No, this will be it. If we can get those legal bills,
Okay,
then we'll be good. Steve, I will send my clean copy that doesn't have the old previous year's budget on it. So
Okay.
I will send that to Becky, and that's the only person who needs it, or AJ too.
I can forward to AJ unless
Yeah.
you have his email.
Okay.
Okay.
All right. I will do that right now.
Great.
Okay. Gail and Steve, thanks so much for sharing some time with us tonight and going through your plan for the next year. Much appreciated. We appreciate all you're doing.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Ooh.
Have a good one.
All right. Bye-bye.
Okay, bye.
Night.
I,
Okay.
Okay. We have two sets of minutes, AJ, that are out there. There was
Yes,
the meeting of the 9th
the 9th and the 16th.
and then the 16th. And we have both sets of those minutes.
mm,
Yeah.
Oops.
Do we want to go through the 9th?
Can we unshare the screen?
Yeah, is that still Steve's? Do you all still see Steve's
Yes.
stuff up?
Steve, are you there?
He's
Oh,
there.
yeah,
Hi, Steve.
There we go.
Hey,
there you go.
Thank you.
Those were nice numbers. We would like to look at them a little longer, but we do have to move on. I'm sorry, AJ, you were,
No, I just, do you want to tackle the 9th first? See if anybody has
yeah, everyone had a chance.
questions.
Susie, you have a question? You have something?
An edit.
Okay.
So in number 1, it looks like I and 5 are the same, or we're basically the same.
Yes. Thank
Okay,
you.
just need one of those.
Yeah, I had a question. I just don't recall on that, the 6th, the first section, item 6.
Okay.
The committees to prepare a response. I guess I just wasn't clear on what that was. So it's not so much an issue with the minutes as I'm not clear.
Well, I think what happened was,
on
you
what
know,
it is.
eventually we gave Steve that sort of charge to present our position at the budget hearing that was happening simultaneously. And I think before we got to that point, there was some discussion of us actually drafting a written response, which ended up being moot since we gave Steve the guidance to, you know, to share our votes on the accepting the 65% statutory. So that's where that came from.
Okay. All right. So we talked about it. We just never really.
Yeah, as it, you know, I
beyond
think the more we talked, it became clear that we needed Steve to communicate something
Yeah.
at that meeting that was happening.
Okay, got it. Thanks.
Mhm.
Susie, did you have your hand? Yeah,
Yep.
Susie.
On page 5, in the finance committee transfers on the last bullet,
Yeah.
I made that motion, and the conservation commission, it was for costs of legal notice publication to the newspaper. So I think it's probably helpful to say why they needed the money.
Yeah. Okay. All right, so I'm just going to add for cost of legal notice
Yep.
publication.
Perfect.
Okay.
You did a good job covering a very busy night.
Oh,
Jim.
These are more like transcripts than minutes.
well, you know
Well,
what? I felt like this was an important one, and so Becky sent me the recording, and so I spent a little more time on this than I would normally.
Yeah, that was my question, or not concern, but observation, that these are less like minutes and more like transcripts. And I've just run into some people who feel that minutes should be short and concise. I mean, I think the debate is all over the place as to what makes for good minutes, but boy, this really puts a huge load on you, AJ, because, you know, you got to view the video and record things, and and it's not only in this set of minutes, but also in the 16th minutes. I mean, you're basically setting a pretty high standard, I think.
Yeah,
for all of
I mean,
this.
the difference, I appreciate the concern. I mean, the difference was that, you know, I was very invested in this particular meeting, and so I wasn't doing a great job myself of taking notes as we were meeting. So I was going to have to rely on Becky to send me the video, and once she sent me the video, I just figured I might as well just kind of go through it. But you're right that, you know, obviously I'm not usually spending this much time on the 16th. Those were all, you know, I was just kind of taking notes contemporaneously while we were meeting. So that didn't require any like major cleanup time or anything.
Mhm.
I just want to make a comment, if I may. Like, I'm not sure if everybody else's recollection accords with my own, but I thought during our discussion before we made our motion, that we were clear, or at least I was, that we, the Finance Committee, would not support a budget that included less than 65% article in the budget that did not include a 65% statutory apportionment. Is that, anybody else remember it that way? Because that's how I remember it.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's,
All
no,
three committees,
let's see.
all three committees voted that way, Bob.
Pardon me?
All,
Yeah, right. But
Yeah.
I guess that maybe it's too subtle, but I was just thinking that we would not support or recommend a budget
So
an
the-
article that supported a budget with under 65%. And I think that's a salient point.
yeah, so I think that
Okay, go ahead.
if you look at the bottom of page 4 is where it's kind of that point in the meeting.
In the top of page
And,
5.
Okay.
Right, bottom of 4, top of 5, and where we have the 3 votes. And then the comment before that was
Okay.
me.
Yeah,
sort of
it's in there,
asking-
but it's
Yeah.
certainly in there, but my interpretation, but I just
Right.
wanted to make that comment. I don't know if you want to change the minutes to express that more expressly, but that, just a comment and just a question to the committee.
I think it's clear.
I just had a minor, right at the end of page 6, it says 4/6 meeting, and maybe 4/6 is our next scheduled meeting, something along that lines.
Sure.
I don't think we had anything scheduled for it, though. That's why it's blank, right?
Yeah. It's not our next
Oh,
schedule.
well, maybe it's better to stay
It was
blank then.
3/23.
Yeah,
I think
It's
we had
fine.
just mentioned that it was an open date, that if we
Yeah.
could
yeah.
use it, but yeah.
I make a motion that we accept the minutes of the
I
night.
second.
Beautifully done, AJ.
Yeah,
Thanks,
It's
AJ.
not
Sure.
easy to listen to recordings and do it either, so.
Yeah.
no.
Not easy to go through the meeting twice.
Oh,
And
that's
we
right.
won't hold you to this standard every meeting.
Thank you.
Okay, can we vote on the
Covenant
motion?
side.
Criteria, aye.
Groves, aye.
Hemingway, aye.
Cashew, aye.
Mosher, aye.
Walton, aye. Okay, next. Just so you all know, I'm up in Vermont this week, and I don't think my connection is as fast as the Shutesbury connections. So if you struggle with me, that's probably because I'm not in Shutesbury.
Well, it's the ornate background that threw me.
Yeah, in the border.
Okay. Oh, yeah, there you go. Let's see, what do we have? Regional school.
Well, we still have another set of minutes, don't we?
Yeah,
Oh,
You
yeah.
want to do the
Yeah.
316?
16.
Yeah. Okay, and AJ, you sent those to us today or yesterday?
Yesterday, I think, yeah.
Yeah.
This was the COLA meeting.
I think it would be a good idea to put in the personnel board members present, that also it's Melody, George, and Melissa too, so that you can see that they're the panels
Had a quorum.
represented.
I had a couple items under section 2, the discussion of COLAs. The first bullet, we say, the people under contract, highway superintendent, fire chief, police chief, and Becky. I was thinking we should say and town administrator instead of having
Yeah,
Becky's
you're right.
name.
Yeah.
And then the 7th bullet down where Jim Hemingway had referenced the 2.2 rate for 2021. A question for everyone. Did somebody mention that wasn't really, when you said that, I think somebody responded and said, actually, it says 2021, but it was really some other period. Am I remembering that correctly?
I'm sorry, it's the bullet in number 2.
Yeah, number 2, where JH, Jim Hemingway's comment.
I guess,
And
I think there was some confusion about whether that was capturing the full year or it was a
Yeah.
partial
through
year
January, like
number.
12 months into January, you think?
Something
Yeah,
like
it
that.
is the full year because it's their fiscal year starts in October.
Okay. I'll make some mention of that.
Yeah, and that was mentioned after Jim, it's not even Jim's, that's be in Jim's paragraph here. There probably should be a bullet below it that says someone responded.
Mhm.
Whether it was Becky or not, I don't recall. I certainly was Becky now, but it was responded that this really represents, that's all.
Or else just take out, it only represents a small portion of the year, if Jim's okay with that.
We all,
Jim, do you have a concern if I take just out the portion, that one sentence, the middle sentence there about it being only for a small portion of the year?
Yeah, sure, go
Okay.
ahead.
and then the next page, I don't know what number it is. On page 3, 1, 2, 3, 4 bullets down, my initial. The last 3 words, below the average. I think it was below the average.
Yeah, beloved.
Thank you.
I just wanted to say, I think after that George made that comment, I made a comment, which was that we are talking about COLA here, which is the cost of living adjustment, not the relative fairness of the wage schedule in our town. And I think that's an important salient point to include in the minutes, because I think it's a fact that it was a response to George's statement that we might have some people who are underpaid compared to other towns in the community. But the COLA discussion is about the cost of living adjustment, not about our pay schedule.
Becky,
I would argue they impact each other over time. I mean, the historical levels of COLA really kind of build or put you in specific positions relative to other communities. If your COLAs are consistently as high, on the higher end where most towns are, you stay level to them. If they're consistently lower, you drop down, you start to slide away from the other ones. I'm just that's why I think it's relevant in the COLA conversation to some extent.
Be that as it may, Becky, all due respect, I'm talking about the minutes and what I said after George's comment. We could certainly be willing to have that debate with you, but that's what should be reflected in the minutes, I think.
I can add that.
Transcript.
Susie,
On page 2 in the bullet that I spoke about, I also mentioned that that the health insurance increases some years have eaten up all the COLA, increase. So that somewhere later somebody mentions extenuating circumstances for the index of what we do, and that would be the health insurance eating up money would be one of those. And then on the third page, George's last comment, it was mentioned that 40% of the personnel board are FinCom members, so they're well represented in the discussion. Okey-dokey.
I don't have any other changes.
I make a motion that we approve the minutes as amended.
No second.
yeah, I'm sorry, I got pushed off of here.
You missed out?
Things aren't as fast online when you're outside of Shutesbury.
Do you want us to vote?
Yeah, go ahead. If I lose you again, please just keep going. If you see me disappear, just keep on going.
Carbonitis, aye.
Chartier, aye.
Groves, aye.
Hemingway, aye.
Cashew, eye.
Mosier, aye.
Walton, I. Okay, next item we have on the agenda is we're going to talk about the maybe a quick update on the regional school assessment, see what's new since what we just talked about. We talked that Steve, the last thing we talked in our meeting was Steve was going to present the Shutesbury proposal, and maybe Becky, you have some updates since then, or maybe Susie, update on where we are with the regional.
I think everyone should have received, I hope by now, I'm not sure if I sent it once or twice, but I did at least this afternoon. Steve forwarded yesterday the sheet that will be used at the regional school committee's vote tonight. And the highlighted budget is listed under 65% statutory. And that's the only calculation on the sheet that they're voting from.
That's great.
Which lowers our assessment to 1611, 1,011,011,
Correct.
which is 65,000 lower than last year.
Correct. But I was terrified to jinx it, so I didn't update that figure in the budget because they're voting now.
Okay.
And, just so you're all aware, but you have the figure, and I'll be making that adjustment as soon as I learn of its vote.
Excellent.
Great.
Let's hope it goes smooth.
Susie?
And so in the process, say the regional school committee accepts that budget with that assessment formula, and then it goes to the Amherst Town Council, and they have a vote that could change the budget. It probably can't change the assessment formula, but it could change the budget because they originally put up a guardrail or whatever that they wanted it to come in at 1.5% increase, and it's 2 point something.
2.1.
2.1, but that's their new figure.
Whose new figure?
Amherst set a new figure with their revised numbers from the state to 2.1. And the regional school administrators worked within that to bring it to, they brought the 65 to Amherst 2.1.
Okay, great, thanks.
They solved the metrics.
So this is highly likely to be what they agree to.
Yes.
It's not gonna change.
Excellent.
Good. Excellent.
Yeah, Jim.
You know, Becky and others, there's a ton of money coming our way. I estimate that Shutesbury will probably get around 60,000 from the federal government. That's a guess, of course, having heard on the radio that Monroe is getting 33,000. They know that for sure. I don't know what our figure is, but Amherst, Northampton they're getting money in the millions of dollars. And would this help to offset, part of this angst over the budget, the school budget? Wouldn't they be able to, use some of that to supplement their school, supplement the budget for next year? This may solve a lot of problems, but I don't know. How's it going? What's the trajectory of where that money is likely to turn up?
It's how they're able to use it. And I think Shutesbury's number is 350,000.
Oh my God.
Whoa.
Wow.
350. How did we?
But it's how
That's a lot of money.
the limits on how it can be
Yeah.
used. That's what we're sorting out.
Yeah.
Whether they're anticipating. because we still, it's possible we might be able to use some of that money towards the HVAC system at the elementary school.
Yeah,
And because it's in the, you
yeah,
know, there.
circulation, yeah, yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
So, yeah, it's an extraordinary time. We're also trying to dig back out of $220,000 that we used in cash. So to have this kind of break is amazing to help us get there or preserve it, so that we can use that money towards having a clearer, not having to make up the full amount of the 220 potentially. We'll see.
How certain is that $330,000 figure?
I've seen it in print on a federal report, but it was, I wasn't able, I've seen it in text. I haven't printed it out yet, but I know it's there. I haven't reviewed all the parameters around it, but it's almost double, it's more than double we got last time. I was just concerned that it was adding what we had last time. And that's the thing I have to figure out.
I
But
see.
that still would be $200,000.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. AJ,
Yeah, I just had a couple observations from watching the recording of that budget hearing that happened, same night as our March 9th meeting, that I think are kind of worth keeping in mind. One, when the topic of, this proposed DESI presentation on the statutory method was brought up by the superintendent, there was like zero interest and appetite in that, and the response from several members of the committee was that they felt like the statutory method was well understood and it wouldn't be a productive use of their time. So that's just one observation I had. And then the other is that, I think clearly this is a good outcome for us to see this proposed budget that you shared. I do think it's worth keeping in mind that there was a dynamic that played out to get to that 65% number, which I think shows how the decisions around the assessment method do have an impact this year, a small impact, but an impact nonetheless on the overall operating budget for the district, which is a topic that I think we've discussed in our committee, and there's been some like different opinions about whether our advocacy for a different assessment method might actually have a negative impact on the overall budget for the district. And that did, again, I'm not suggesting that we made a mistake or that we should be reversing course or anything remotely like that. I just think it's important that we recognize that there is a connection. And what happened at the budget hearing is that they basically boiled it down. They presented two versions of the budget, both of which used the 2.1% increase for Amherst assessment that the town council's revised guidance to the regional school committee. And so both versions of this budget set the Amherst assessment at that 2.1% increase number. And the two versions of the budget were one, using the 55% statutory, and the other using the 65% statutory. And the only thing the main thing that changed between those two budget models was the overall operating budget for the district. So in order to get from 55% to 65%, it required a $21,000 reduction in the overall budget. So again, I'm not bringing this up now to suggest that that's damaging for the district or for anything like that, but I do think it's illustrative of how of the kind of dynamic of how the assessment method and our advocacy of a specific method can have an unintended consequence of reducing the overall operating budget for the district. And I don't think it's a big deal this year because it's, relatively speaking, it's $21,000. It's not a huge number, but it is something to keep in mind. And when we've discussed this in the past, I think there's been a point of view shared at times that, well, Amherst supports education, so they're ultimately going to not lower the budget in order to achieve a different assessment method. And I just don't think that's how it played out this year. So just wanted to share that observation.
I just want to say something in response to AJ's comment, which is that if we had not been firm about our position, we would still be at 45% now. And
Totally agree.
the budget also changed. The guidance from Amherst went up from 1.5 to 2.1% there. So we caused them to move their willingness to pay more for the budget than they had offered at the beginning. And the only way we got them to move in that direction was by being firm in our position. And I agree with you when you say that made very little difference to the budgeting process for us to get a better cut. What did you say, $14,000?
It's $21,000.
$21,000. That's unfortunate, but that's a minuscule compared to the total budget.
Totally
So-
agree. I'm just stating it as, like, I think as an important piece of context as we think about this and discuss it in the future, is that there is the potential, there is a way in which our advocacy has an impact on the overall budget. And I don't think it was a significant one this year. And I don't disagree with the first couple of comments you made, Bob. It seems quite clear that if we had not taken a strong position on this, we would be looking clearly at a different, at 45 or at best 55%. I totally agree with that.
Susie?
I wondered if a discussion of a working group stayed on the table.
Yes, Becky, do you want to say something now?
Well, maybe you know more, AJ. I only have what Steve relayed to me, but it was quite a bit of information. I didn't know if you heard it at that meeting or it developed later. Probably it was at that meeting. So you can confirm what Steve told me. Go ahead.
So I thought the interesting discussion that came up around this was that Peter Demling in particular at one point talked about how perhaps the regional school committee needs to take a bigger role in sort of reviewing and discussing the assessment method. So the theme, the kind of message that I got from that conversation is that there was less interest in the kind of way of setting up working groups where we've got members from all of the different towns, and more interest in the regional committee itself, like taking some time and during the budget off season to debate and discuss and look at assessment methods.
Yeah, that's what I heard from Steve, that they are tired of this process and going round and round, and that they want their committee to step up and take more of a lead role in determining the future of the assessment method. I am just concerned because I'm concerned that they think that statutory is something that they're all familiar with, and hopefully all the school committee members are. It'll be interesting. We just don't know what starting point that they will take, or if they will, I think we're gonna have to pay attention and lobby for education and consistency with the method that we've been working with.
George?
Is there any news about Desi coming in and presenting how this all works?
The news is the school committee did not vote for that to happen. And without them voting for it to happen, we can't do it regionally. So I think we continue to lobby them to make sure it happens.
That's their logical first step.
I know.
For crying out loud.
I know. But they don't, That's why we asked Mike to ask them, because if we knew if we asked,
Right.
either if we held it, nobody would come, or if we asked it, but that could change. We'll see what transpires in their meeting tonight. But I think we can't let go of it, because otherwise we could be here next year and the rolling average statutory formula might not exist anymore.
Great.
Well,
Well, congratulations, everybody. I think we did okay, at least tentatively, right, Becky?
Well, for today,
We should,
another hill conquered.
when is the, well, it's not, when is the final, is it sometime tonight, right? That they vote on this?
Let's hope it passes. It seems very, very likely.
Susie, I'm sorry.
Yeah, no, that's okay. The subcommittee did make a table about what it looks like at different percentages in terms of how much of that is minimum contribution and how much of that is enrollment, using the enrollment numbers. And so I do think we need to continue to advocate for DESE, but that table might help people understand what the breakdown is that we're talking about. And I wonder if we would, I mean, the subcommittee can't send that without the rest of the committee seeing it, I think, or approving it. But I wonder if there's a small lead in that would be helpful.
Whatever meetings they have will be public, so we can find out before they happen. We can share materials and information with the superintendent to share with the committee. So I think we just have to be active and maybe spend a part of an upcoming meeting reviewing what information you want to share with the regional committee.
George,
And I would just add that we probably want to meet with Steve Sullivan when we get to that point to get a sense of what,
Yeah.
Get what his sense is of what's the best way to go.
And give him some of the information so he can advocate.
And he'll have a sense of how they'll respond to it.
Yeah, definitely.
Good.
I wish I had his cell phone number. I'd be asking him right now.
It'd be texting him. He could give us the update.
The ticker tape.
Yeah.
Mike,
Yeah, I was listening on the regional school committee meeting and also listening to you guys. They just did the vote. And it was 7 in favor of the 65% of the 5-year rolling average, 1 against, and it didn't look like Steve was at the meeting. So so it looked like it passed and everything.
Great.
Thank you.
Excellent.
Thank you, Mike.
Okay, Bob, you can say it now.
That was fine.
What?
So Bob can say it now. Nice job, Finance.
Nice job, everyone. Thanks, Mike, for the
Yeah.
information, for the intelligence.
And just a quick question. The budget amount they were voting on was like 31,913,777. Was that an increased amount from what they originally came in with or something? I missed that part of your discussion.
Yeah, they Amherst said that they could pay up to 2.1% increase over a 1.5 that they originally had said. So the numbers went up just I think on the 9th.
So that 31.9 is the 2.1% number. Is that correct?
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. All right. Thanks.
Yeah, and they use more choice money, I understand, to help fund it.
Yeah, I missed that part. So
yeah, Mike, you know who the one no vote was out of the 8?
the person, I forget her first name, her last name is Seeger. SEEGER?
Probably Leverett.
Yeah, I don't,
That'd be my guess.
I'm not sure where she was.
I think Steve
Yeah.
reported when the concept when of 65%, when he said his statement, she fell out of her chair. So she was anticipating her town would not approve. I think that's her.
Great.
It's Bethany Siegel
Okay.
from Leverett.
There was also another email from Doug Slaughter. Did any of, I couldn't remember if I sent it, and I will forward it after the meeting. It was in regards to the bus budget, transportation budget for FY22. I think I did not forward that one. I put the
Okay.
new number
Yeah.
in the budget. Did you, George?
Yeah, you sent it.
I just want to let everybody know, I went to the Leverett website. She's the vice chair of the school committee in Leverett.
It's probably the regional
Okay.
representative.
Yeah.
Doesn't say that here, but I'm
Becky,
sure.
I don't think we did get that bus.
AJ, did you say yes or no?
I'm sorry,
Yeah,
I don't think we,
I read something about it. I thought, yeah.
On the
about
bus?
Yeah, about how there was he thought there was some mistake in the calculation for
Yeah.
transportation
Yes,
costs. Yeah.
And then he sent a
oh,
new,
okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, that one, yes. That was from,
but the interesting point in that, well, Shutesbury gets a reduction of $3,000. But Leverett's went up to over $100,000.
Yeah.
The
Um,
increase was 100,000?
Yeah.
Yeah.
The increase was about 23 or 24,000,
Oh, okay.
but the budget went over $100,000. And the reason given was because of increased student population,
Mm.
which I had not heard about Leverett before. So I just thought it was worth mentioning because that also will have impacts on the assessment formulas. As they gain in numbers, they're going to get hit harder.
Didn't Leverett lose some students choiced out because of a principal kerfuffle?
Yeah, they lost a bunch of elementary. Yeah, so that's why I found it surprising. But maybe now their numbers
coming
at the
back.
end of the year, coming projected for next year are much higher.
Right, okay.
Which means that they're going to benefit more from the statutory weighting. Well, the 5-year rolling average won't help them if that's the case, right?
Well, the 5-year rolling average will help soften the blow, but
But the 5-year rolling is in both the formulas. Yeah, all right, I will have to see.
yeah.
Becky, concerning busing issues, if a Leverett family decides that they don't like the Leverett school system and they want to choice out and send their kid to Shutesbury or who knows where, does the town still have to provide transportation?
No, transportation under choice is a responsibility.
Ability,
of-
that's what I thought. Okay,
So it doesn't affect our busing cost.
No,
good. All right.
'Cause especially when they come from far off places, it would be kind of a drag if you had to go out to Great Barrington or something to get somebody.
Just a side on all this, I don't know if anybody realizes this, but I was walking through the woods the other day and walked over towards the Morse community, where the climbing ropes and everything else. And they're running a school there of over 30 children. And they're all outside having a great time and wearing masks and the whole 9 yards. But I was surprised to see such numbers there. In the middle of the woods, no less.
yeah, in the middle, and they went all winter long.
And they went all winter long. That's right.
They did have days off when if it hit 20 degrees or something, they didn't have class. They had a temperature cutoff.
Uh-huh.
Didn't have school, from what I understand, but
Yeah.
This is elementary school children?
Yeah, they're all up to age 6 to 11, I think, was the age range. That, at least it looked that, that's the way it looked when I saw the group, outside at play.
and
And you're
it's
My
doing math and
understanding-
English?
it's not an official school. It's, they got around the rules because they tried to get accreditation.
Oh, okay.
And then they
They're
were
homeschool children. Yeah.
basically in a group program.
Mhm.
Oh, I see. So they're
Yeah,
not there all day long.
They're there for a good chunk, but I think they are officially children who are homeschooling and then their families are paying a tuition to Morse Hill to supplement, I guess,
Mhm.
Yeah.
whatever educational plan that they're
Got it.
is being implemented for each family.
For the phys
Yeah.
ed side and socialization side.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I do think they are there. There is, because I did get some recruiting, like materials from them, because our family's done programming there. But and I do think they did hire an educator, so that there was some instruction in like core academic subjects,
Yeah.
but I think
Well,
it might have been more support. Yeah.
Yeah, it was clear what was happening. I think there's an association with the Hartsbrook School as well with all of this. They're using a lot of their techniques. I'm not totally certain about that. I may go over there again and ask more questions.
Susie,
Some of this is just about people coping with the pandemic, and we
Yeah.
don't know what the
Mhm.
upshot of this will be, so I'm not sure how much time we want to spend on it.
yeah, I think this is a topic, or this overall, the regional school, I think we're sort of drifted away from the
Yeah. No.
regional school a little bit, and we do have a couple more items. Do we want to wrap up regional school
Yep.
I'm fine with
and move on to the fiscal year 22 revenue and expense projections? And that is what, Becky, you sent us some new information, some updated information.
I did, but it's only slightly reduced. The wonderful thing that I wanted to talk through with you is I have complete, I reviewed the revenue sides with a DOR representative, and she found that everything we are doing is right in line. She has given me suggestions of doing what we did last year and getting up-to-date values from the assessor to help potentially be able to get credit for our new growth if we have some. But the major message I wanted to share was we are doing it correctly. The revenue side, we don't really have a levy ceiling until we have a resolved values for the town. But we're doing the best we can when you're in that position where your ceiling and your levy limit are colliding. So I just wanted to share that information because I had to tell you that I was uncertain before.
George?
Yeah, so Becky, I did want to ask you a question about that because I think we heard that there is actually going to be new growth next year. There's going to be added properties that will be taxed, that will generate added revenue. And when I look at the town assessed value, the total town assessed value, we're keeping it the same 21 to 22. But if we're estimating what the new growth is, shouldn't we also then have the basis for that new growth? In other words, the additional assessed values that will be on the books next year? And I'm wondering why that wouldn't be reflected in the FY22 column and why that isn't larger than the FY21.
Okay, are you talking about the values?
Yeah, I'm talking about the assessed values that we calculate, that we bill on, that all the taxes are based on.
Okay, so what I was just explaining was, okay, so last year we did increase it because, Kevin shared his estimates and I was going more by instinct, but then I had confirmation from Joe Markarian that it was appropriate to do. I didn't want to do it again this year until it was reviewed by DOR. They too are encouraging, half of what she spoke to me about was communicating with my assessor and getting the LA4 information as soon as it's resolved, which doesn't change the bottom line of what we're balancing to, but it will increase the potentially, there might be a little bit of increase in the excess levy capacity generated by doing that. As far as the new growth goes, once you've hit the levy limit like we did, there's an article that I shared a couple weeks ago with you guys. I forwarded and I can send it again. And in that article, it talks about you can't take credit for the new growth. And she did confirm today that you can lose new growth if in combination with the valuation, it goes above the levy limit. So that's the piece that is complicated to explain, but that's where we're at.
Becky, you said if it goes above the levy limit, did you mean if it goes above the levy ceiling?
2.5% of the value.
Yeah.
The ceiling.
Yeah.
Becky, maybe you can help me understand this. I see on line, I don't know, the lines aren't numbered, levy limit, percent of levy ceiling, 102.5%. That doesn't seem right that we could do that. Maybe we got to return to the idea of growth, but from what I heard from Kevin, we won't have a certification of growth till after this budget is passed. Is that true? If that's true, we can't really include the growth in this budget.
The budget process has no impact on the recap process. I mean, we have to do it to make sure our budget is within the parameters of where the recap comes out. But the timing, nothing's really official until the recap is final.
Right, but so in other words, we're taking a stab at it, but we're taking a risk that we're going to be out of kilter with the guidelines.
No, not the way we've handled it. Not the way we've handled it. When you look at this, because right now our levy limit at the 225,990 is that we're at the ceiling is the 5,649,76.
Right.
Okay, and typically the number we're working with is the property tax levy limit, the 5,791,000.
Yeah.
Yeah, so in that first row, Bob, she's got the levy ceiling number in there, not the levy limit number. And that's because of that being that 2.5% over, the 102.5%.
Right.
Requires us to use the levy ceiling rather than the levy limit.
Right. So we have to use the lower of the two numbers.
Right.
Yes.
So Becky, to stand this,
And this could, when I work with Kevin and he comes up with the values, then we'll put a new estimate of values in for the town assessed value and see where that comes out and see if there is room or not for new growth this year.
But those numbers won't be around until the fall, right? We won't have those
No,
numbers. Becky,
the
until
finals
fall?
will not be here till fall, but what we used last year, the 223,000, Kevin gave us that number in April, March or April. So a similar number, he's going to be conservative, but he'll give us a new number that we will use for the value. Because he's done, he's
Okay.
kept up on all the new growth. He knows where those projects are at, and he has been working on the valuations comparing to the sales throughout this past year. And actually the values are based on last year's values. It's not a calculation of the current year. It's calculation of last year.
so on this new growth then, if there's new property and it's generating new revenue, then the town is collecting it. But if we're running up against the ceiling, then the real impact is that the amount of money we raise from everybody who doesn't have new growth goes down, or it's limited. In other words, if, I know this, it's confusing to me, and if there's new growth, then that's new revenue coming in. But if we're not able to raise the amount of the levy because of these limits, then what's really happening is the new growth that's coming in is lowering the taxes for everybody who's currently paying to some extent.
See, it's weird because they will pay the taxes.
Yeah, it's new revenue,
Revenue comes in.
Right, well, but it
but
won't.
we're
be-
not generating additional revenue. So what's happening with that money? It's
Right, so you lose it. You lose it. You lose the ability to tax a portion of the new growth potentially, but it depends on which way you're going. If your values are contracting, you definitely lose it and you can keep losing it. If your revenues are, if your values are expanding, you can gain it back and potentially hold on to all of it, depending where the numbers come in. And I looked at a report on the values. There's a report that shows the values compared to sales, and it's a projection. And the projection says that they think that the value of the town is closer to 245 million than 225 million.
Whoa.
If that holds up, then we can gain back the new growth that we potentially could lose.
Yeah. But that won't be, we won't get that information until there's a revaluation, right?
Except for the pieces that happen incrementally. There are some values that go up as
But sales occur and so forth.
yeah. And the sales there have been more than 50% have been significant increases.
But Kevin also said that pace has really slowed.
Yes, in the last few months, the inventory's gone.
Right, exactly.
Um,
Nobody wants to move anymore.
well, yeah,
Everybody wanted to bid.
Right.
yeah, and all
So-
the houses that we couldn't sell are sold.
And if you try building a new house today, you got to get a loan to go get a single 2x4.
I've read that.
Yeah.
So
Very expensive. Materials are incredibly expensive right now.
They're doubling in some cases, aren't they,
Piece
Bob?
of ply would cost you like $50.
in the demand for labor, contracted labor is high right
It's
now.
very high and it's in short supply, and so that price has gone up too. And everything else, the building materials, copper, cement, insulation, you name it, it's all very high. The supply chain problems up and down, so it's extraordinarily expensive to build new right now. So the situation is not going to change very rapidly because it's just really prohibitively expensive to build.
Yeah.
So to finish out the revenue piece, Becky, just so I understand, this revenue that you're presenting is not going to put the assessor in any kind of a bind when it's time to calculate the tax rate. Because of the excess levy capacity, he's got the room. If it turns out the new growth is different in any way or valuations are different, right? Isn't that always something we're concerned about when we go to town meeting, is that they're not going to find out that they needed more revenue to cover the budget because one of our revenue estimates wasn't quite right?
That did happen one year. But as far as your question goes, I don't think it puts Kevin in a bind, but the assessor really has nothing to do with excess levy capacity. I mean, that's just our bookkeeping function
Okay,
that keeps us from running up against the ceiling. We're using that as a tool to make sure that we don't over budget up past the $25 per thousand.
Prop 2.5. Talking
About
about.
2.5, yeah.
thank you.
But one year when we did, I think it was we passed an override. For the last override we passed, it was $200,000 back in 2008, I think, or 7. And the assessors freaked out because they were short on their, what was it, their overlay came in, they had a huge amount of overlay expense that year.
Mm.
And, the revenue was really tight. We ended up, it all worked out because we had excess, we had overlay from prior years that could be used to make it balance. But anyway, that's not anything to do with what we're talking about now.
Thank you.
Except an example of one of George's potential catastrophes.
Just being cautious.
Yes. It's important. Okay, and so the only change on the expense side was the reduction in transportation.
Yep, before you get, just before you get off the revenue, so really, there were no changes on the revenue side, were there? Were there,
No.
Becky? Okay, this is the same as the last version.
Well, now we have the regional assessment to change.
We sure do. That's a big one. I started to change it twice. I was like, no, I can't jinx this. It's, I just couldn't take the risk, so.
So that's a $40,000 pickup.
50.
1651 to
You're right.
1611. Yeah, that's
You're
right.
40.
Yeah.
50, yeah.
So the bottom line, I'm going to it right now, where we have an excess of a surplus of 46 that goes to a surplus of 7. It goes to a surplus of 47.
I thought we had talked about including a 65% assessment in the budget. We went to the budget exercise. Yeah, I'm sorry, Susie.
There was some discussion about we should budget as if that's what we're going to do. But it wasn't in terms of this draft, looking at this draft, because we're pretty far from the end still.
Okay.
Yeah, and I just did, you have to have your, it was St. Patrick's Day when I was looking at it. You got to be careful,
Yeah.
The luck
be
could change.
It's good to be conservative.
Yep.
You should have been more careful on St. Patrick's Day.
Yeah. Was there beer involved?
Susie.
So other pieces that are left to be coming into this is once you change the regional one, there's the PER board is meeting tomorrow night. No, not tomorrow, Thursday night, and they are going to come up with a proposed system to use, and that'll generate increased wages. And do we have any other?
There's a couple of longevity that aren't in here.
Mhm.
So there's no COLA increase in this
Not yet.
right now, right? Until
Correct.
it's
It's
0% in this document. Okay, got it.
And the longevity, the regional assessment, the COLA, and I have to double check for COG. I'm not sure if I have updated numbers for them.
But you talked to the treasurer, and this health insurance number is looking like a reasonable number.
I'm trying to get him to go down $10,000, but I haven't
We'll
won
get
the
'em.
argument yet.
Keep working it.
Okay, I think I will win.
And there's a review about some salary issues that may affect the FY22 numbers. Is that right?
Yes, there could be a marginal impact.
And what about the police contract?
They are asking to negotiate, but they're not prepared at this time to meet yet. So everybody knows the police officers have been contacted by the union representative from Teamsters and has been talking to them about how to negotiate their new contract. I had talked to Tony Torres earlier in the year, he thought it best just to do a 1-year MOU, keeping everything the same. He left his position, and so my emails were not being answered until recently. And then the new rep is working with the police department. So I do need to get representatives from each of the 3 committees for a negotiation with the police union.
And that would affect FY '22?
It will. I'm not sure the negotiations will be complete by then, but then what has happened before, they had to be dealt with retroactively. So, and I think there's currently a surplus in the police budget for wages to help absorb that, but I'm not sure how it's going to impact next year.
Well, Becky, I think the finance committee assigned me to be in that negotiation with them. Whenever that happens, you can
Okay, great.
let me know.
I will.
Becky, anything else you want to point out on the expenses side?
Those are the main issues. We've got some unresolved finance issues. I do want to talk to Jackie again. I did talk to her about a week ago about, I had gone to the school committee about potentially having any savings for next year, FY '22. At that point, they told me they were too nervous. I touched base with her and we agreed to talk more in a couple weeks to see how application of grants were working out and how they're starting to view FY '22 with all their new funds available. And Jim, I think that CARES figure includes significant money for the school too. So I just don't have those details yet. Hope to get them soon.
Susie?
And part of the CARES Act, I'm hearing a discussion is to help students that fell behind. So there's real programs that are going to need funding. It's not, and they fall under that money, as far as I understand.
Yeah. And so that means that when the school committee defined their use of choice funds, one of the elements of that was they were going to fund a remediation position for FY '22 out of their choice funds. It appears that they should be able to fund it through CARES money and not have to use their choice funds for that, which would free those choice funds up for something else. So there's a lot of moving parts at the moment for the school to figure out.
Becky, this is not directly related to the school budget per se, but with the school heating system that we're studying now and that's going forward through the committees. What have we made any effort to determine whether CARES money can be used for that? Since this control system is also connected to the ventilation system for the school.
Yeah, no, I'm looking into that as well as I've reached out to my Green Communities rep to see if there's any funding through Green Communities grant money too.
Yeah, well, I think certainly you can make an argument that the controls, which were the old pneumatic controls that control the ventilation system, have to be replaced to make air quality more healthy for the school, for the students. I don't think it's a specious argument at all to say that this upgrade will contribute to health of the air in the school. So I think we should give that a good look.
I agree 100%. That's what I brought up earlier in the meeting.
Great.
Melody?
Just a point of clarification, because I'm confused. When you say CARES money, do you actually mean the American Rescue Plan or do you mean CARES money? I thought there were two different things.
American Rescue's money is the new money, right?
Yes.
Yeah. From a lot of what I've read so far, many of the rules are very similar, so I'm kind of blurring the two. sorry for confusing you, but I'll try to get them more separated out in my mind, but right now they're still blurry. And we still have a little bit of money left in our CARES fund.
We need a new acronym,
Mhm.
like a hole in our head.
Yeah, to differentiate.
What's next, boss?
Well, we did have some discussion about, and we've talked in the past when we got through this, the revenue and the expense projections, we did have in the past talk about airing our own views on where we are with these projections and what our own views are as far as where we are right now, what our current positions are.
Well, I have one question about that, and I was, when are we gonna meet with capital planning so we could get a sense of what our purchases are gonna be?
The capital planning was supposed to be tonight. We've had Bob and AJ were at the capital planning meeting that the school, it came up because of the dire need for repair of the air handling system at the school, which needs to get solved because it could fail. And that being the case, and the second item that's still open, the slider doors, not windows, we don't have a final cost for. So those two items are not yet resolved from capital planning. So because we have extra time, I asked Jim not to put the capital plan on for tonight because we have to resolve two major issues before the capital
Yeah.
plan presents to you guys.
Yeah, George, to your point, I guess I think of the capital planning as more of a cash and stabilization discussion as opposed to necessarily our positions on.
Yeah, understood. I agree. But I do know that, you know, it is gonna be connected to some level, but that's
Yeah.
all. That's why I raised it.
Yeah,
Jim, I think we should have that discussion. I don't know, I'd like to be able to prepare for it in advance of the meeting.
Yeah.
For myself, I think just to review the latest draft and maybe make
Okay.
some notes to just bring some issues up before the committee.
okay, all
Uh,
right. That's that, if the rest of the committee's okay with that, it's okay with me to. put
So
that up.
I'd like a little bit more clarification about what areas you feel we would be discussing. We've talked separately about people's idea of how to use free cash. Is that one of the topics that you're thinking is in this discussion?
Well, I know for me, Susie, that I would like to discuss some items in the budget that I would recommend that we fund from free cash this year to soften the transition from last year's cash subsidy of the budget.
But I'm asking if in this list of things, it would be FinCom input for revenue and expense is one of the areas how we will use free cash? I need a little bit more specific topics or outline.
I guess my thinking on this is we've all sat through now all of the different department budget reviews and proposals, and we really haven't had our own internal discussion about those. And some of us might have different ideas
Okay, I get it.
on what we support or what we don't support, perhaps.
That's so specific, thanks.
Yeah. So that's what this was about. Becky.
I am wondering if how much of this conversation dovetails on to policy issues, and because it sounds like the use of free cash is kind of a policy issue to some extent, and I was just wondering if if part of the goal of the conversation is to like establish guidelines, or is it just to look in terms of this year's budget? I'm just wondering what people are thinking. Or if this is a situation where you're trying to develop criteria or responses to how how we deal with certain capital items or I mean, the funding of them, as well as how we use other reserves. I don't think I'm 100% clear, but
George,
Well, number one, this year is a unique year, so, but for me, it's about talking about best practices and practical means for balancing this budget without putting us into a situation where we're gonna have expenses in the future and no way to fund those other than cash. But yeah, I mean, now I'm starting to debate, so I don't want to get too far into that. But to me, yeah, it is a policy thing, but you know, the finance committee decides year to year what they're going to do. Any policy we make isn't really going to stick and nobody in the future has to live with it, right? It's
Right.
more what is the proper thing to do in the circumstance we are now, applying best practices. And yeah, we have an issue. Last year we funded the budget with 220. I know you've heard me say this, and you know, we don't want to just whack everybody by pulling out $220,000 out and having to put it back into revenue. So what's the best way to do that?
okay, thank you. There is a request for a FinCom transfer still too, Jim.
yeah. And we
And
could
I
do-
heard some people talking about they really hope we'd end by 9 o'clock tonight.
oh, the pressure is on. 15 minutes. Okay, well, with that comment, yeah, there's a fund transfer request on the agenda for, this is the police academy. This was,
This is for Marcus to go to the police academy that was discussed last year.
Yeah.
And I believe had support from the finance committee that after he actually went, that you would support a transfer of $3,000.
Becky, my recollection was that when the chief came to us and said he wanted to do that, it would be funded out of his budget. Why is it going to require a transfer from FinCom reserve?
When I talked to him, he told me that his recollection is what I just told you. So I can go back to minutes and try to figure that out. But
I'd like to do that. I do recall that he said that. So that was part of his sales pitch was it could be paid for out of the budget. Of course, that's just the $3,000. That's not on some of the other expenses that we undertake when we send someone to school. But I think it would be worth looking into that before we vote on a transfer. And you say there's a surplus in the budget.
in the salaries, but you can't use the salaries to pay for books
I
and
see.
things like that, and uniforms and stuff.
So let me just ask a question in theory. If we did not transfer the money, how would it be paid?
I'm not certain because he told me he was counting on the transfer.
well, how does he is Dan?
Dan, yep.
He's still
With-
with us.
It doesn't work for us anymore.
Not at this time, correct.
Yeah, how does I'm just looking at the most recent expense report and how the police, how are they looking so far? Through, I think that we are through early March.
Yeah, March 5th. or 4th.
15th, I think you should have.
Yeah, it was done on the 4th
Sorry.
of March.
Yeah, March 4.
March 15th is March 4 is the date on it too, but
Yeah, so why did she put 15? Because they'll all be paid on the warrant that's processed by the 15th?
right. The checks don't actually go out till the 15th.
Got it.
Becky, would this be the police department operating line?
Yes, that has $4,473.18 in it.
Yeah, and we spent over 76% of that line. So we're ahead of, we're sort of running
That's close. That's close to 9
close.
months.
So we're probably gonna spend all of it if we stay on track
Yeah.
without spending the $3,000. Right?
Yep. I think regardless of what I find in the minutes, I think I'm still going to end up having to come back and asking for the $3,000.
Yeah, that's the point. Yeah, we're basically running that line at budget through early March. So there's not gonna be anything left.
Can we just let it run down, Becky, and then just whatever's deficit, we'll just do the year-end transfers?
Yes, that's a possibility for sure. I mean, you can do it either way.
Because there's a chance he might not, they might not spend all of this and it'll end up being smaller than that amount.
Well, I know that Kristen is stepping in, trying to keep things afloat, and working with what she's inheriting, and she's really making a concerted effort to get them into necessary training programs and other things that this budget is used for. And I don't know all the costs that she'll be encountering, but I know that she is trying to figure all that out. So I can have further conversation with her, but there are programs that they have costs.
Susie,
Can I propose that we let Becky look up the information and put it on the next meeting's agenda and go ahead and vote at next meeting?
I like that idea.
If that won't Becky, will that hang up the process, do you think?
It's just more, yeah, she just won't have a clue if she has money to spend for another 2 weeks.
Okay.
Well, when is our next meeting? It's April, right?
4th of September?
Yeah, April 6th, I think.
Well, we're gonna skip a week?
Yeah,
Oh, man.
what does that mean?
how'd
When you
that
say-
happen?
Becky,
Holy
when you say she
mackerel.
won't have a clue, what will that mean? When you say she won't know, she won't have a clue for a couple of weeks, is that?
Well,
Yeah.
well, if you look at this, there's, like $1,000 left. If she has to turn over the 3,000, so she doesn't know if she has 1,000 or $4,000 to do the trainings and other things. She's just out, just had to buy a bunch of ammunition. They have expenses.
Melody,
What are they shooting?
They are required to do a specific amount of, what do you call it?
range?
Range.
Yeah,
Uh,
range.
gun,
Oh, okay.
practice.
Yeah.
Practicing at the range, they're required, I think, every 3 months to do a certain amount. Which is probably better they practice than they don't practice.
Susie,
The other piece is, I just want to review that the discussion around sending Kristen to the academy, it was clear that that money was not part of their budget. It was clear that they were asking that the town send her, and I felt it was clear that the FinCom would pay that bill.
Really? Was it? Wasn't clear to me, but anyway, can we just put this off like you recommended, Susie? I think that would be a good thing. We're coming back in 2 weeks. It's not going to be that too long, so maybe we
So
can find
I'll
out from
get
us.
copies of the minutes and find out the other expenses that are anticipated in the next 3 months.
isn't that really the most important part? Because ultimately, it's,
Yeah,
it's what
Which
they're
part
gonna,
is which part is most important?
the latter. That what they're gonna spend. We know they're gonna spend 3,000, and we know that there's probably other operating costs for the next 3 months, right?
And
And
yeah,
there's gonna be a need for a transfer to cover
Yep.
whatever the difference is. Regardless of what,
It-
regardless,
it's
I'm
it's
sorry,
just,
regardless,
we don't
regardless
even,
of what the minutes say.
I agree. It's just, it'll be interesting because Kristen will be guessing in part. I guess Dan can help, but we will do that and come back with information for the next meeting.
I'm sorry,
right?
Melody. Yeah, yeah. Melody, you had your hand up, I think.
No, sorry, I was just moving.
Okay, never mind. Are you okay with that, Becky?
Yes.
Just for clarification on Kristen, I mean, I think at our meeting, select board did vote unanimously to approve her application to the police academy. So I think there's at least a vote on record that there's support for sending her. I guess the subject of how that, where the money for that would come from wasn't discussed, but
But the money we're talking about is
Right, for
the
Marcus,
sending
yeah.
Marcus.
yeah. No, I know. I just.
Yep.
well,
But
something
you're
we
right,
should
that's
just-
also a question.
Right.
And there's been, we don't know what will happen in the end, but there's a little bit of new information trickling out from the Chiefs Association about the potential for a shorter bridge academy. And we're just hoping it starts to evolve into something concrete. So hopefully there won't be a need for the full academy for Kristen.
A bridge from the part-time to the full-time.
Yes.
Yeah.
But we have no specifics on it as yet, so. The
That would
select
be
board's
great.
attending a meeting on Thursday night, where the topic will be police reform. So hopefully they'll get some information from that. And we'll know at least who to call and lobby to push the bridge transition instead of the full academy for full-time people. So we'll continue to do that.
I just want to make the chairman aware that the time is 9:58.
8:57.
Yeah. Pressure is on. And we had we had a couple of topics, but we can table them. We can table them until our next meeting. If we want to move we talked about, at least from an agenda perspective, we want to make sure what key topics are out there that the FinCom needs to nail between now and the end of this fiscal year. And we talked about cash stabilization, OPEB as being some of those possibly. But this is more than a 2-minute discussion.
Yeah.
I think covering that. So maybe that's something we cover in our next meeting.
Yeah, if we can make it an
Yeah.
agenda item and focus
Yeah.
on it.
Like that.
Yeah, okay, so we'll add that, we'll push that, hopefully for our next meeting. Expense report review, unless Becky knows of something that we need to address, we could probably table that.
I had no questions. I reviewed it. I didn't see anything. It all looked the
Yeah.
same as previous one.
Yeah. Yeah, or I should say, I said Becky, but I should say any of us, if any of us have questions,
Sorry about that.
including George.
Sorry about that.
And then other report from other, people that are on other committees that are representing us on personnel board or broadband or capital or school.
Just briefly, we had a capital meeting and we discussed the heating situation and the problems over at the school with the school committee and the select board and Becky. And we're going to be meeting again, I think, on April 6th or what is it, Becky, next month?
Yeah.
And we're going to be addressing that issue and also the sliders. So that's still under consideration. And the building committee will be part of that reporting to the capital planning committee and to the select board and the rest of the committees involved in this. So that's the report from those two committees, unless you have something to add, AJ.
No, I think that's it.
Okay. Any other committee reports?
All the personnel board meetings were in executive session.
Oh, that makes it easy.
The school committee didn't discuss anything that would be relevant to us.
Okay. All right. The only other item then is our next scheduled meeting is that first Tuesday in April, unless we so choose to meet next Tuesday. Are we good for April 6th?
Okay,
Okay.
that works.
All right. It's 9:00.
Spring break.
Good job, Jim.
Hey, I felt the
Under the
pressure.
wire.
I felt some pressure. All right, well,
I'll make
somebody
a
wanna make a
motion. to
motion?
adjourn.
Second.
all right,
All, Arvanitis, aye.
Artier, aye.
Groves, aye.
Hemingway, aye.
Cashew, eye.
Mosher, aye.
Walt and I. And
Thank
sorry if my connection was slow. I'll try to be in Shutesbury more often.
It's required, Jim.
Huh?
Thank you.
All right.
Good night, everyone.
Night, everyone.
You guys have
Good night,
a good one.
everybody. Good night. Good night, Jim.